Hi, this is Kate from ADHDkidscanthrive.com. Thank you for listening. For this week's podcast, I decided to post a recording that I did with a very dear friend named Lisa about 2 years ago during COVID times. She also is raising a son who struggles with challenges related to ADHD. I'm very thankful for Lisa agreeing to join me in an episode to share her wisdom and insights that she's gained as a parent on her own journey. I really do think that we can all learn and feel supported when we're listening to others share their stories that seem and feel more relatable. So in this podcast, her son was still at that time in high school and a teenager. And since this recorded episode, her son has successfully graduated from high school and he will be attending college in the fall. Now, I never aired this conversation in the past because it wasn't clear to me at that time how ADHD Kids Can Thrive was going to evolve into this podcast. But for a summer episode, it felt like good timing to bring it out of the closet and share it with you all. So let me know what you think. And if you find that listening to stories from other parents who are sharing what they've learned on their journey as helpful to you, let me know, because we can do more of these kind of episodes if you are indeed enjoying them. Thank you again for listening. I really appreciate it and enjoy the show.
You know, now that I'm thinking about it, we are old friends. Not to say we are friends that are old, but we have known each other through a different industry. We both had our little girls that are now turning 20 at the same time.
Yeah.
I remember.
And we worked in radio.
We did.
We were selling radio, and now we're on the radio.
Or the new version of it.
The new version of radio.
But if I think about it, we both had two girls at the exact same time. And then we had two boys. I had a boy. You had a boy. We didn't have two boys, but they are two kids that have similar challenges. And so I do think it is a little interesting. And so we do have a lot of fun.
We do. We've kind of lived. These little things keep bringing us back together in life. And in fact, when I came to visit you in Seattle, we were having breakfast just to catch up. And when we were catching up on
4
everything,
hours later,
yes, in that conversation, we connected the dots that we both were raising young boys who had similar issues. And so that created a whole nother connection that the two of us have.
You know, I'm very proud of the book that you wrote that I feel like I was the first one to read it hot off the press. This Is How We Roll was something that I hadn't seen before, and something that when I was done reading it, which I don't believe I put it down. I'm not exaggerating. I don't think I got a cup of tea, went to sleep, fixed a meal. I literally opened it and finished it all the way through. And just because there was so many parallels, so many similarities, I was waiting for the next shared frustration and how did you approach that? And I have big takeaways from that I'm not just blowing sunshine, literally have made my life happier from reading it.
Oh, you're very kind. You're very kind.
It's a hard thing to do, I would say, to open yourself and be that raw about everything that a family has to go through. Biggest takeaway I had, if you don't mind.
Yeah, shoot, go for it.
Yeah. Biggest takeaway I took from just listening to the different analogies and timelines and all the different things that moms and dads do to, try and normalize, for lack of a better word, a kid that's struggling to, maintain focus and move down whatever, playing field they're moving down. But the biggest takeaway I had was that you have to meet that kid where they're at. I felt that was brilliant, that we so desperately feel like we have to, and especially I think you and I are similar because our girls, are, doing all sorts of, curing cancer and running for governor and other things like that. And then you've got your sons where you're like, okay, all this boyish energy, and I just need to, make sure this kid's okay, make sure that his self-esteem during, adolescence isn't, harmed, that he feels confident and capable. And, so all those things you do, whether you get, I don't know, SAT flashcards or tutors or, swivel chairs, you fight with finding the right cocktail on medication, whatever it is. I think that the daily message that really warmed my heart and also rang so true is just every day you just have to meet that kid where they're at by, normal measures. And the word normal doesn't even seem to have a place in life anymore, but, that they'll be able to be where they need to be, go out into the world and make choices and be successful. And the big elephant in the room for anybody with an ADHD kid right now is that online learning is exacerbated times I don't even know what for a kid with ADHD. The engagement piece we had to learn was, boy, it's just a hit. And every distraction is a distraction. We did everything from if you could see my little study area for him, it has a bike with a place to put your computer, like a recumbent bike. It's got a pivot chair where you'll fall off it if you don't pay attention. It's got one of those chairs you lean on with your shins, just for the mobility, enacting that the part of your brain where if you're kinetic, it engages the frontal, lobe, and you stand a chance at listening. And yet still, I'm like, things don't get turned in. I've actually even thought about just redoing this year. And because the biggest thing is they're giving away A's, they're like, you turn stuff in, and I don't know that he's learning anything. I'm watching and I can see it's just, a whole level.
Tough. Yes.
Yeah, really tough. It has been tough. But
and is he a sophomore in high school?
He is a sophomore. So he's just starting to get the cadence that you expect from high school so now you got through school. Now we've got like 4 hours of, some homework in, that's just not going to happen, right? You got to take your wins where you can get them. But, where he was just starting to get on board, and I do all the supportive things I can, during a normal school year, which is just get the work in and then review it really hard. And then I did feel like he's learning something. I see a cumulative learning. Testers in general, probably because we all have a degree of, ADHD, we struggle with math because one day you can be focused, but the next 2 days, maybe you're not, you're looking out the window and you building blocks that, tend to get missed. And then, if you're a 14-year-old boy, going into 15, going to 16, you just feel like the other people are in the room, get it, and you don't. And it tends to tank you a little bit. And I've been impressed to watch how Cameron handles that, but you just want to protect them from that.
And how does he handle it?
Cameron handled it early on. We diagnosed him probably right around third grade, fourth grade. Though when I look back and I took him to like preschool, right as he was turning 3 at Challenger, and I'd come to pick him up and he'd be the one kid removed, and the teacher would be like, Cameron was a little bit too social, so we had to remove him from the circle. When I look back, indicators were always there, but it wasn't until third and fourth grade when even though he was still getting, these, A's and B's in math, which I thought was interesting, I did an independent school to try and get him into my daughter's private school going into middle school. And you were measured 1 through 100, and there was only one kid who got a 1. And I was like, well, even if you speak English on multiple choice, you should hit somewhere around 25% at the very worst. And he got a 1. And so I took him to and I had him evaluated and said, look, what is true here? Is he either getting A's and B's in math, or is he whiffing hard? And had them test him. And he really had so many missing building blocks that when you do a cumulative math test, it's Russian. He just didn't even know where to start.
Do you think he was just kind of memorizing things when he was young?
I think he was.
And if he hadn't memorized
out of a
it,
desire. So the thing that I took out of that, like, how does Cameron cope, was that he does stay attentive. He has a strong desire to be on the right side of the law. So when they're turning stuff in, he'll still do his best. And for the most part in elementary school, that's how they measure you. Not necessarily whether you're getting it or not. And so Cameron, follows that. He also social, as far as his just social sense, social emotional, he early on, just either who he is or as a coping mechanism for half the time feeling like other people get it and I don't, he compliments other people. Like instead of waiting for them to say, you seriously don't get it. He's like, I'm really impressed with how you were able to, and I saw that a couple times when I was in fourth grade, I was volunteered to be one of the room moms. So it wasn't like a special day when I was there and he was, trying to be ultra, Boy Scout polite. I was there a lot and I saw him do that. So he when going into ninth grade in a big public school, because he got a 1 on the private school entry exam. So in the public school, he got able to do, he was the junior, or not junior, sorry, I think they called the class representative. So out of a school of 1,500 for the freshmen. So he's super popular kid.
Yes.
That super struggles academically to just stay attentive. And so he,
but very socially dynamic.
Yeah, he definitely is liked. He's a likable kid. He tends to be the ADHD that is inattentive but not impulsive. So he as far as the emotional or the cries easily or is frustrated or punching or impulse control is not one of his struggles. His is it's staying on task.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So did you ever do any kind of medication interventions with him?
So right about that time when in fourth grade, when I said, okay, so what is the real issue here? I took him to ADD Center of Bellevue here in Washington, and they immediately diagnosed him as, yep, clear case of inattentive ADHD. And I was resistant because, I was like, didn't know what I knew it was amphetamines. I knew it was a controlled substance. Didn't know exactly what it meant. I didn't know at the time about that, the ADHD brains. I think there's a very cute book called, or like, All Dogs Have ADHD. Another thing I've heard where kids have, race car brains, but Volkswagen brakes, and that,
yes.
The association they make with the norepinephrine and dopamine being able to meet the receptor, which is, easy in a normal brain.
Yes.
But in an ADHD kid, you're constantly fighting in that. And amphetamine or any stimulant tends to, level that out and give them a fighting chance to learn. So it took me a while to feel comfortable with medication because I didn't understand what the medication was doing. I didn't understand that it's one of the only ways that it has like almost no side effects. You can quit it at any time. While some people, you do have, the amphetamine kind of withdrawal because you kind of get used to that high. It's still something where it's not going to have an impact on you, physically. Something that really does help, especially I would say for kids that are middle school, high school, and gives them a fighting chance to learn. So we did eventually get on board. We're not perfect about that. There are times when he just doesn't want to take it because it affects his appetite and how he feels. But we did the whole circuit from Concerta, in kind of Ritalin derivatives, Adderall. We have landed with a Vyvanse, which is extended release of 3 amphetamines that are manufactured, not like Adderall, which is one that you can, take. And then if you want to get it out of your system, you can take like vitamin C, like some orange juice, and so you stand a
Right.
chance
Flush
of
it
going to
out.
bed. Yeah.
Yes.
So we're going through what everybody goes through, which is which cocktail works, which one, Vyvanse seems to almost be invisible after a while. You don't feel it. You don't feel the surges, and it goes past school into what would be the first couple of hours before dinner when you want some homework time. And then it's okay by dinner. And then they sleep okay. So Vyvanse worked for us. And then I also will have on hand a little bit of like small 10 milligrams of Adderall for when he either has a tutoring session or like a coaching or somewhere where he will benefit from up front and center. Now, here's another cool thing that I've kind of come across recently.
Do tell.
I know this is actually recent and haven't had a chance to even talk to you about it, but we came across this ADHD counseling coaching really, and it's for adults. They wouldn't even take kids under 17 until I called them, and you know how that can be. And they took Cameron because I begged them, and he has benefited greatly. And what it is it's essentially it's tools for working with any of the executive function. So that's where that's his kryptonite. I mean, we can be walking out the door. And again, my kid's 16 now, and I have to tell him to put his shoes on. And so at some point, you just got to stop and just go to the car and hope he figures it out. But this was what I was hoping this coaching would address. And it has in just about the most amazing way. What I've heard,
Are these educational therapists who are working with them?
These are
Or just an ADHD coach? Is that
their byline is skills, not pills. Because the founder, and I regrettably cannot remember her name off the top of my head right now, but I can look it up. I want to say Suzanne, but it's ADHD coaching.
Okay.
I think that might even be just the .com, but she had some sensitivity. She could not take the medications of any kind. She even said she can't take like Tylenol. There's something with her system, but she, as an ADHD sufferer of sorts, had to learn different ways and learned, the benefit of like connectivity and awakening, the frontal lobe. A lot of times people don't get this, but a kid with ADHD sitting in a math class where everything's supposed to be quiet and still, looking at a board, a problem goes up. The other kids brain, the blood kind of flows to the front and they go to work. Kid with ADHD, it's almost like you're taking like magnets, which suck the life out of them. It's almost like they go to sleep. The blood rushes the other direction. So they learn this association with movement. And so if you are doing multiplication with your third grader and you toss a ball to where while you're doing it, you go 3 times 3. And when they catch it, they say 9, and then they do one and they throw it and you catch it and tell them, in case there's one they don't know. And it turned out to be this simple, weird little thing. And it doesn't have to be in a yard. Like you can do it with any little thing where they're forced to move. That's why those fidget spinners, I never understood why they needed those. I thought they were a distraction, if anything. But
Right.
What it is whether you're clicking a pen or your legs going a million miles an hour, or you're, getting up, to sharpen your pencil a distracting amount, it's because you have to engage that. And as an adult with ADHD, I learned that it can turn into something where you set yourself up. Like, for example, I had an issue. I'm very sorry if my mother is going to hear this, but I had an issue where like I wouldn't pay my tabs, like my registration. And every time I passed a cop, I would get a surge of adrenaline and it would awaken me. And adrenaline is like your body's best way to you feel kind of normal. It's
Right.
your own body kind of leveling itself out if you have ADHD. So unfortunately, you get, and you have to really watch it with teenage boys, is you get a propensity for that kind of rush to balance. And it can be racing cars, it can be doing risky anything. And so things, drugs, alcohol, all the things that keep us up at night over teenagers, you have to
Having a
be attentive to.
girlfriend, having a boyfriend,
Any version of, how do I
dating.
monitor that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as an adult, I personally have had to catch myself. I'm like, why are you not paying a bill just to wait for it to see if, they turn the lights off? What are you doing? Meaning, and it's literally, ADHD as an adult, it comes out in not super attractive ways that you look for rushes, cheap little rushes, and you can get them in other ways, Starbucks, other different ways, which I've, when I acknowledge it, I have this other little thing that I do that I do also want to mention, just for any mom out there who happened to pass ADHD down to her son or daughter. But Mel Robbins has been my new little saving grace. She's the at Mel Robbins. She is an author and a host, and she has a couple simple things. One of which is a big thing with ADHD.
Does Mel Robbins have adult ADHD or had?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
she admittedly has anxiety, depression, ADHD, and she's also just an incredibly coherent, attentive to detail about how to manage that. She had this one episode that talks about procrastination and perfectionism and the paralyzation that comes from that, and a very simple thing, which is just an adult version of the trying to manage executive function, is when you procrastinate. If you have ADHD, you procrastinate. That bill, you just let sit there, dishes pile up, all the things that represent a stressor with work,
Yes.
things you
It's
don't.
why you delay your homework until the last
Exactly
minute.
right. And so the ADHD coaching that I have for Cameron is addressing that with I can hear his coach in his room say, okay, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is what this Mel Robbins does, where she said, listen, if there's something that you don't want to do, there's a stressor attached to it. You can't quite get started. It just seems impossible, and all the reasons we avoid things. Say it's a pile of laundry. She goes, you just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you just tell yourself you're going to do 5 minutes of it. And great news is that, over 80% will continue to finish it, right? So it turns out to be this great little tool where in your head, you just don't make a big deal of it. And I thought, okay, this is just, this is just a t-shirt moment, this is a novelty, but it totally works.
It
It
worked.
totally
Okay.
works for me.
Good to
Yeah.
know. And is it working with Cameron too?
It works for Cameron too. One of the things that was kind of a tool prior to the, how do you just kind of avoid, jump into something you're procrastinating about, was changing your state. And so his coach Taylor had him where for 2 minutes set a timer, and he would do jumping jacks and burpees, and and do it to music. It turns out Cameron doesn't like jumping jacks and burpees. I don't really know anybody who does, but what Cameron will do is he will do these other little kind of calisthenics and dancing kind of things for 2 minutes, which is that literally releasing energy from the mitochondria and lactic, all the different things that essentially enliven your brain. And if you punch really fast, or if you do anything like that, you literally feel like you just had a cup of coffee. You dance around, change your state. Yeah. If a kid is sitting, doing online learning on the couch with a blanket, kind of prone, yes.
Nothing's
Okay.
happening.
Yeah. They got to sit up. They kind of do that Tony Robbins thing where if you sit up straight, you put a big, smile on your face and you look kind of stupid, but you feel the energy difference that comes from the physical change. And so that is one thing, one tool, changing your physical state. The other is that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it for 5 minutes, avoid procrastination, just do the easiest thing, which I think, we were of the era, the Stephen Covey and, M. Scott Peck, where they were like, delayed gratification and do the hardest thing first. And for me, I'm like, well, if I'm going to do the hardest thing first, I'm going to do that like after I watch some TV and have a snack. Because
Right.
the hardest thing. So they've kind of shifted that to
You
do
never
the
want to
hardest thing
do the
right
hardest
now.
thing.
You never want to do the hardest thing. So little things tend to also, not get done. So, I mean, it's just a constant battle. And it kind of does circle around to, some days you're the windshield, some days you're the bug in ADHD. Sometimes you have that
Right.
recall. Sometimes, the receptors are off and you can't remember some basics. And the one thing I think COVID has also done, because we've been really hunkered down and more isolated than, I don't know, we're really isolated. So one thing it has done for me though is kind of get some perspective on what really matters. And for both of my kids, one of my kids is like couldn't go to school in Manhattan, where she got into this really, ambitious school and is trying to, crank it on all cylinders. But she is with her boyfriend person that is doing school there, and they're kind of living a Nicholas Sparks novel, in Monterey. And she will send things like pictures of seagulls and little crabs. And then it's kind of hit me, this COVID time has given us all a reset to where
Yeah.
moms are given kind of permission to, you don't have to necessarily, from the second they walk into high school, be rushing your ADHD kid through SAT drills. I really feel that. I feel like right
Oh,
now,
I
if,
agree.
yeah, I feel, do you feel just a reset, right? Where people, right now, I just want them to be happy. Just really. So they're playing a little
Yes.
bit more
Kind of
Xbox.
we slowed down on the rigor of
Yeah.
school, of
It
test
gave us
taking
permission. You were forced
and
to.
doing hours of homework and,
Yeah.
schoolwork to get ahead.
I don't think we ever would have let up for fear of what that would mean. And so
Yes.
just because at some point you're like, I can't, this is broken. I really just want him to learn. And so I feel like right now, if I have a kid who's spending too much time on Xbox, but if you think about it, Kate, if you and I were smart enough to have figured out, hey, if there ever was a pandemic and teenagers who super rely on, their friendships to be mentally well, if we were to, to create something where they can have headphones and see each other and play a game together for part of the day, then I'm like, yeah, okay, so I'm not going to be the Xbox Nazi anymore.
Right. Right.
I'm just going
Gaming
to
is
try.
allowed during the pandemic.
Yeah, I know. And then I think it also, again, takes me all the way back to meet the kid where they're at. Sometimes, you can't ask them to go right from, trying to focus when it's really just a talking box to then hours of, homework to they, everybody needs to get out and move and have friends and just feel balanced and healthy. Is it harder with an ADHD kid? Yes. Some days are better than others. Yes. But yeah, I think I just want them, ultimately, I just want both my kids happy. I don't care if they're burning it up or whatever. I really mean it. I, yeah,
And
not
do
to
you
be
think you
morose
kind of
with some of
reset
them.
on that during the pandemic?
Yeah, totally. And Avalon was suffering from like anxiety and depression but cranking out some amazing things. She was like the freshman spotlight at her school, but she was really unhappy. She actually had to get married to this boyfriend that she had. You're like, what? Because if not, they basically were not able to live together. And during a pandemic, you either live with your mom or, because you're not in
Yes.
Manhattan. So they've created this amazing thing where they are together and they're both doing online school, and they have a kitten, and they are a block from the pier in Monterey. And then you just see, the texts come over of, plants and painting and, what teachers said. And, yeah, when you take the pressure off, all of a sudden, Oh, it's peach season, juicy peaches. I mean, just enjoying that. And Cameron has always been that. And all he wants is for me to be happy. That's it. The currency I have over Cameron is if he feels I'm disappointing in him, he just falls apart. So for me, I've completely just let that down. I'm like, guess what? I'm never disappointed ever. I am. If you're happy, I'm happy. We're doing the best we can. When you need help, ask for it. And so that's kind of
Fantastic.
how we're getting by now.
That's lovely. All right. Tell me about, just kind of summarize for me, like what a mom who is just figuring out her kid has ADHD, what would you tell her to do and kind of what not to worry about and what she should focus on?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question, coming full circle. And I don't even know where I'm at in the circle, but let's see. The one thing again, and I took a lot of this from listening and reading through your experiences and different analogies similar to mine, where just meet that kid where they're at, just be okay with where they're at on that day, and get the tools, because ultimately there is a window of learning, and you do want to position them to manage that well. And if it means medication, just realize that we're all chemistry projects. It's like having ADHD is like having low blood sugar. It's hard to focus, right? If you don't get, a glass of orange juice, you're not going to be able to conjugate an English verb. So you need to just handle the chemistry well. With anything, it's just good biologics. It's making sure they get enough sleep, making sure that they have a routine is huge, that they're already on the right path before they realize there's an option to do something else. It benefits kids greatly that they have all the things that you need as far as exercise and eating well. I know it sounds kind of, like rote, but the fact is, handling the biologics. If you've got a kid that is tired, hungry, you're fighting stuff other than just a dopamine, serotonin imbalance. So, address those things first. Make sure they go to bed on time. Make sure they know when dinner is. Make sure they have a clean area to study, that they know that they have to be there. Make sure that early on, like third grade, they get planners and they get used to writing and knowing when things are due, so that they don't have to rely on remembering it. If they have to remember it, they won't. They'll feel bad about themselves, and it could have been averted. So the other thing I would say is, just pour love on the kid all the time. Look for things they're doing right. If they are, when Cameron at 15, just because he just turned 16, took the garbage out, I thought I was going to cry without being asked. I literally am like, well, is he hiding something? I'm like trying to remember that he was going into what was the motivation. And it just happened that enough routine where when they see you doing this, and then you've asked them enough times, and then they get some sense of normalcy, and it doesn't come as easily to them as others. And you have to remember that, so that I think kids will look back at their childhood at how you made them feel, right? Versus, how like when they think of you and home, and was it constantly critical? Was it what you aren't? Was it, why can't you be more like your sister? Was it, are you a slow learner? Why, what is it that I have to do to, or is it, you're pointing out the things, whether it's the smallest thing ever of, that they're doing right. It's like, I saw that choice. I appreciate that. And it just makes them feel better. So they're happy no matter what. And ultimately, as I've said, in all of this pandemic and every other weird thing going on, that's all I care about. If I died tomorrow, all I want is for them to know how to create happy.